What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get
Less and less. Since we will have to operate with some values, we would like to find out in advance what the content of all kinds of harmful and not so harmful substances in the exhaust gases is measured in. For CO, CO2 and oxygen, everything is clear in percentages. But the content of hydrocarbons CH and nitrogen oxides NOx is measured in ppm, parts per million, or parts per million. So 1% is 10,000 ppm. Percentage is too big for these substances. To illustrate, let me give you a simple example. The nitrogen oxides content should normally be no higher than 1000 ppm when measuring engine emissions under load. In percentage terms, this would be 0.1%. Clearly, operating on hundredths of a percent is very difficult to perceive, and noticing 1090 instead of 1000 is much easier than noticing 0.109 instead of 0.100. Well, now let's see what all those hundredths and millionths of a percent can say about the health of the motor. Oxides on health. There is probably no point in saying that the ever-increasing environmental requirements in many countries are not always unfounded wishes of the Green Party. Many emissions are actually dangerous to humans. Despite the fact that modern car ecological systems look overcomplicated, there are reasons for their introduction. And if earlier someone did not like a simple system of exhaust gas recirculation, EGR, now even complex two-circuit EGR systems do not seem to be something special. And rightly so. It is this system that fights the most harmful nitrogen oxides for humans. After all, NOx, both ordinary NO oxide and NO2 dioxide, as well as other oxides, causes a lot of diseases, from lung diseases to cardiovascular diseases. It's also a strong carcinogen. And what does an increase in their content in the exhaust indicate? First, the EGR system itself may be malfunctioning. If the valve is successfully jammed, there will be no recirculation, and under load the entire exhaust gas flow will completely fly out into the pipe, without partially returning to the intake. I remind you that simple recirculation systems do not work at idle and at low load. And the peculiarity of NOx is that they are most actively formed under load and at high temperature. Secondly, the cause may be in this very high temperature. Abnormally high operating temperature of the engine leads to a significant increase in nitrogen oxides, with which the working EGR will not cope. Here it is possible to check the cooling system operation, but it is better to make sure of the mixture quality. If it is poor, overheating of the engine is ensured, and besides, the temperature of exhaust gases will grow especially noticeably. And it can lead not only to an increase in the share of NOx, but also to the burnout of exhaust valves. So it is desirable to find out why the gas analyzer suddenly shows excessive nitrogen oxides content as early as possible. The second harmful oxide is carbon monoxide, aka CO, aka carbon monoxide. Its norm in the exhaust is not more than 0.5%. CO2 dioxide is practically safe. It is formed in the exhaust when CO and oxygen are combined, but the oxide, CO or carbon monoxide, is a sneaky thing. Only a gas analyzer can sense it. It has no smell, but it can easily knock out a person. And if you inhale it more, you can even die. What does its increased content indicate? As a rule, it means that the mixture is too rich. There can be many reasons, from a clogged air filter to a current injector or a non-working control under sensor. The crankcase ventilation system may not work, the throttle may be dirty. In general, you will have to look for the cause yourself for a long time. It is better to ask for help to good diagnosticians. Not dangerous, but unpleasant. If nitrogen and carbon oxides can be harmful to health, then pure oxygen and nitrogen, as well as water vapor in the exhaust, can be considered safe. However, an increase in their concentration also indicates some faults, so from the point of view of diagnostics they are no less interesting than harmful oxides. Let's start with nitrogen. There simply cannot be a lot of nitrogen in the exhaust. Unlike oxygen or carbon, it does not participate in the combustion of the fuel-air mixture in any way. Moreover, if you remember, our entire atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. So its content does not affect anything except the ability to form nitrogen oxides under certain circumstances. But we've already talked about that above. But the presence of too much oxygen should give you pause for thought. It is ideal, of course, when it burns completely, but the ideal, as everyone knows, is unattainable. Therefore, its content in the exhaust is allowed to be no more than 0.5%. Why can it be more? The first reason is air infiltration. Oxygen unaccounted for at the inlet cannot burn and is perfectly accounted for at the outlet. And at the same time, it gives the engine a too lean mixture. The second reason is some malfunction in the fuel system. In this case, the amount of air is normal, but there is not enough gasoline. There can be many reasons, from a clogged fuel filter to a dying gasoline pump. A gas analyzer is likely to tell you whether the problem is the choke or the fuel system. If the excess of oxygen is more noticeable at idle speed, it is likely that unaccounted air is entering somewhere. If under load, at medium and high RPM, the fuel system is more often to blame, not enough gasoline in the mixture. Water vapor, read water, of course, is harmless. But its appearance often indicates a serious malfunction. Usually about the penetration of antifreeze into the cylinders. That is, the cylinder head gasket may be damaged, and there may be something worse, cracks in the block or in the blockhead. However, if there is a lot of steam, you can see it without a gas analyzer by too thick light smoke from the exhaust pipe. And now ppm. Here we get to those 1 in a million numbers. What is measured in such small values? They measure the proportion of CH hydrocarbons. The norm for a good engine is no more than 50 ppm. Ideally, of course, they should not be there either. These compounds are formed by the components of fuel, which should be burned completely. Unfortunately, this is an ideal picture of the world, and in the real world these emissions will always be there. But in very small quantities. The harm to the body from these compounds is significant. You can simply get poisoned, and if you inhale them in too large quantities, you may have heart problems. Why can the proportion of hydrocarbons increase? The first reason is poor combustion of the mixture. Most likely due to ignition lapses. And that's not the worst of it. Worse if the compression is to blame, which for some reason fell below the norm. Wear or coking of piston rings, scoring, overgrown valves, these are also the reasons for the increase of CH content in the exhaust. Knows it's a pity that not everyone has a gas analyzer. Even in car services they are rarely used. An ordinary scanner can tell more than this device. But the theory that cannot be put into practice is too boring to talk about it much. So let's move on to the more interesting part, using your nose, or rather, your sense of smell, instead of a gas analyzer. Yes, this is also possible. Let's start with the most despicable gas, carbon monoxide. Alas, it is, as I said, odorless. So your nose won't help you, but if you suddenly get dizzy in the garage, run away to fresh air. It is very likely that CO poisoning has begun. You can quickly lose consciousness and die. That is why it is better not to smell this gas, as well as any gas. But if you really want to smell it, pay attention to whether the exhaust smells of gasoline. The presence of this odor indicates an increase in the proportion of unburned hydrocarbons. Pay attention to compression and ignition skips. If you can hardly smell anything near the tailpipe, but your eyes start to water or get watery, that's a sign that the nitric acid solution is acting on them. It's weak, but it's enough for the eyes. In this case, you need to check the air intake, the fuel system, the operability of the exhaust gas recirculation system and the operating temperature of the engine. There is a chance that the engine is chronically overheating. Pure oxygen and nitrogen cannot be sensed, no matter how amazing the unit is, not your nose. Well, and most importantly, you should not abuse sniffing. It is possible to understand approximately what is wrong in the car. But at the same time you can be poisoned by all the crap that is in the exhaust. Therefore, be careful and in no case try to analyze the smell of exhaust in the garage. Do it only in the open air. And in moderation, because toxicomania is worse than ignition misses or a fouled EGR valve. In conclusion, understanding the harmful percentages revealed by the nose and gas analyzer can provide invaluable insights into your vehicle's health. By identifying issues such as excessive emissions or fuel inefficiencies, you can address potential faults before they escalate into more significant problems. Regular monitoring not only ensures compliance with environmental standards but also enhances your car's performance and longevity. Stay proactive in your vehicle maintenance and remember that early detection is key to a safer and more efficient driving experience. Thank you for watching and drive safely.